Welcome to Servant Leadership Mentorship. Today we continue Unit 1, Interpersonal Communication, Part C, Understanding Inappropriate Communication and Refining Communication Skills. So our objective today is to help individuals identify inappropriate communication styles, understand why they may be perceived as problematic, and then to learn alternative strategies for more effective and respectful interactions. Communication varies greatly across individuals, cultures, but some styles can unintentionally cause discomfort or even misunderstanding. So, this lesson is about building your awareness, not judgment, and finding ways to make communication more effective. So, what I want to start with are some examples of inappropriate communication. First, I will give the behavior, and then we're going to explain why it can be considered inappropriate. So, number one, interrupting frequently. It can, number one, make others feel unheard or even disrespected. So let's refer to scripture. Proverbs 18:13. If one gives an answer before he hears, it is his folly and shame. So connecting this to servant leadership, and servant leadership is death to self, putting others before yourself, putting others higher than yourself, why interrupting goes against servant leadership is because it makes that person feel unseen, unheard, and as if what they have to say has no value, isn't worth hearing. So the second problematic behavior, is sharing overly personal details about your life. So oversharing personal stuff. So oversharing can make people potentially uncomfortable, especially if the relationship isn't quite intimate enough or close enough for such topics. Proverbs 21:11 says, A fool gives full vent to his spirit, but a wise man quietly holds back. There's time for intimate conversation, and there's time for being vulnerable. But if you overshare, it can actually create distance between you rather than pulling you together. Okay? A third problematic behavior is actually speaking very loudly. When we speak really loudly, it can come across as aggressive and even overwhelming. So Peter 3:4 says, But let your adorning be the hidden person of the heart with the imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious. So remember, servant leadership mentality is, what can I do to make you feel safe? What can I do? What can I be for you in this situation that will help you communicate and feel valued? So if being too loud is something that can come across as aggressive, just be aware of that. And we're gonna talk about some ways to identify and perhaps even navigate these particular behaviors. The fourth behavior to be aware of is to fail to recognize social cues. So, for instance, if you're talking and you see their eyes glaze over, you see they start to check the time. If you fail to recognize those nonverbal cues, those social cues, it may make the interaction feel one-sided or awkward. Have you ever been in a conversation and halfway through you thought, this conversation isn't going the way I intended. I don't think they are engaged in my conversation anymore. Ecclesiastes 8:1. Who is like the wise, and who knows the interpretation of a thing? A man's wisdom makes his face shine, and the hardness of his face is changed. So when you can interpret people's body language, use wisdom to navigate a conversation, it will create a beautiful communication interaction. A fifth problematic behavior or communication style is the overuse of sarcasm or bluntness. And we have to remember bluntness, sarcasm, both are very easy to be misinterpreted as rude, as hurtful. So let's remember Proverbs 15:28. The heart of the righteous weighs its answers, but the mouth of the wicked gushes evil. So going back to the word sarcasm, in our life class, one of our members made the point that the original root of sarcasm means tearing of the flesh. And so that we have to understand that if we choose to use sarcasm, most of the time there is a hint of contempt behind the words. And we may not even realize it, but there is a hint of mocking, a tone of mocking behind sarcasm. And that mocking spirit is conveyed in our communication style. And the recipient, whether they admit it or not, they feel the sting of that remark. So it's really important, especially in the confines of servant leadership, where our whole focus is death to self and putting someone else higher and a sustaining connection, that we watch our words as we communicate. So why are these behaviors challenging? Well, there are different social norms, and there's different people who process information, including communication type information differently. You have neurodivergent type people. That's people who are somewhat on the spectrum, people who have sensory sensitivities, people who have ADHD. And then you have what they call neurotypical type individuals. But these type of individuals may process and prioritize information differently. And we have to understand people don't wear a sign on their head that says, oh, I'm neurotypical. Oh, I have ADHD. Oh, I have these issues. It's just the way their brain processes. It's not that there's something wrong with them, but they just process in a very specific way. But we don't know. We don't know how people are going to respond. So these particular people, particularly neurodivergent people, can sometimes find it difficult to follow unspoken rules or even recognize those unspoken rules. So one thing that we want to kind of focus on in this moment is the intent versus perception, right? So I want to clarify that these behaviors that we've just talked about often come from genuine intentions, but they can be misinterpreted by others. So if you're really blunt, your heart may just be to help someone, not realizing the way you're communicating is damaging, right? If you're communicating with someone and they say something that captures your attention and it reminds you of something and you blurt and interrupt them because you have something very similar that it makes you feel like you can connect with them if you share it, you don't realize that you've interrupted them because it came from a place of genuine interest in what they were saying. So intent versus the perception of the other person. So here's some strategies for better communication. Number one, active listening. So what to do? How do you actively listen? Simply wait until the other person finishes speaking before responding. Nod as they're saying stuff. Make small affirmations like, oh yeah, right, I see. That makes sense. It affirms them as they're speaking. Why does this work? It shows respect. And actually, it ensures that you fully understand before replying. If you actually wait to hear their whole thought, then when you reply, you're taking their whole thought into consideration, not that first little piece that you focused on in the beginning. Number two, how to create boundaries boundaries within yourself when it comes to personal sharing. What to do? Gauge your relationship. Ask yourself, do I know this person well enough to share this particular piece of information. Why does that work? Well, it's going to balance an openness and vulnerability and respect for the other person's comfort level. Sometimes people are sharing without regards to how comfortable the other person is to receive the information that you're laying on them, right? Number 3, how to combat talking too loudly. Well, there's ways to modulate your tone and your volume. So, what to do? If you are unsure of how to speak, match the volume and the tone of the person you're speaking with. If they're very calm and they talk like this, then you can respond calmly and talk in the same tone and volume as them. If they're real loud and boisterous, you can laugh out loud and match their tone and respond. And actually, as we learned before, mirroring actually creates a type of intimacy. Why does this work? It keeps the interaction comfortable and non-intimidating and lets the other person guide the volume and tone, not you, but rather the other person. Number 4, how to recognize social cues. What to do? Well, it's a matter of study, right? You learn to identify signals like lack of eye contact. They're looking everywhere but at me. They're looking down, they're looking all around. Checking the time. Have they gone from multiple word responses to just one word responses like, yep, no, I don't know? Were they responding much more verbosely? That's not a word, but I just made it up. Or have they kind of shut down? These are things to take note of, and it will work because it's going to help you adjust the conversation to keep the other person engaged. And finally, how to navigate if you tend to use sarcasm or be overly blunt. Practice empathy. So try to imagine how the other person might feel about what you're saying. For example, ask yourself, could this be hurtful if I heard it? If someone said, my husband doesn't really like you, right? We don't want to say that, correct? We don't want to say that. If I heard that, would I be hurt? Maybe not for me, but for someone. Why it works. It helps foster trust, it helps foster trust and connection. If they can trust you not to wound them with your bluntness or sarcasm, then you're going to develop more intimacy if they know that you're not going to use sarcasm, especially if they're sensitive to it. So let's practice some scenarios really quickly. So interrupting, right? So what I want you to do is if you practice this scenario, next time you're talking to somebody, practice waiting your turn to speak. Every time you have that impulse, be like, oh yeah, me too. No, just wait. Don't just wait till they take a breath, because sometimes the period isn't at the end of their sentence yet. Don't wait till they take a breath. Wait till they finished their thought, okay? So if you struggle with speaking loudly, practice matching your tone with the person with whom you're speaking. If you struggle with oversharing, sharing too much information, role play asking yourself, is this too much information for our level of relationship? Is this too much information, period? Should I even be sharing this? You can ask them, one good way to gauge is you can actually say, can I share something personal with you? If you want to, instead of just dropping it on them. That way it gives them an opportunity to say, I don't know, how personal, right? If you hear something like that, you can instantly say, oh, they're not comfortable with me sharing personal stuff. So let's dive just quickly a little bit deeper and describe some specific scenarios regarding inappropriate bluntness and maybe a few extra additional strategies. So let's address those phrases and examples of communication that might be perceived as inappropriate and why they can lead to misunderstandings or conflict. Then we'll look at ways to reframe them constructively. So here's some example phrases and why they may be considered inappropriate. So here's the phrase, you stink. Ugh, whew, you smell. All right, why would you not do this? Well, no one likes, first of all, their flaws to be verbally just released into the air, right? pointed out, highlighted. And it can come across as insulting, and it can actually hurt the other person's feelings and make them feel bad about themselves. So, you know, yeah, we'll talk about some possible scenarios to how you can say it differently here in a second. Another one, oh, you're wrong. That's just wrong. You're not right. No, I don't agree with that. You're wrong. So directly stating someone is wrong, it can feel dismissive, combative, judgmental. It can make them feel like you think they're stupid. Okay. Here is another one. I don't like you. My husband doesn't like you. My friend doesn't like you. Right? These are just examples, guys. It can damage relationships. It can make someone feel incredibly rejected, even if it's true, and unwelcome. Now, if you're going to walk around the world doing that, that's your choice. But remember, the focus of this is to walk in your life with the heart of a servant leader. Okay. So we have to be very diligent with our words and how we say things. And there's different ways to approach this type of situation, and that would be conflict, something we're going to talk about later. But we have to be very careful with our words. Now, why might people say these type of phrases? Well, honesty. You may be the type of person that really values directness and truth, and you feel like in your heart that you're just helping someone, right? Frustration. You may not know how to express your feelings in a different way. You may struggle with emotional management, and you may get to the point where you've held something in and finally you say it and you're trying to be heard, but it comes away in an unkind way. Or simply, you may be totally oblivious. I think a lot of people are, especially if you're not good at social cues, but you're totally unaware. You may not realize how your words impact others. And interestingly, sometimes the people who struggle to understand how their words impact others are actually very sensitive themselves to the words of others. So we need to be aware of these things. So what are some constructive alternatives? Well, let's go back to the original phrase and then reframed constructive alternative. So, oh, wow, you stink. Another way to say that could be, hey, my friend, can I talk to you privately? I hope this doesn't make you feel uncomfortable, but I think maybe you may need to switch out your deodorant. I know I have had to do that in the past because my usual just stopped working for me. You know what I use? I use Secret Ultra Dry, right? You presented a problem that you are compassionate about, and then maybe even a solution to help them. You are wrong. That's just wrong. You're wrong about that. One way you can say this is, for example, okay, this is how I see it. I see it a little differently. Can we talk more about it? Right? I don't like you. One way you can constructively turn this around is, I'm feeling upset right now. Can we find a way to work together better that doesn't create conflict? Okay. Why do these alternatives work? Well, they're focusing on the issue, not the person. So instead of attacking someone, they actually address the issue or the feeling, right? They invite collaboration. So by asking questions, offering solutions, you encourage dialogue. Okay. They show empathy. They show that you are for them, not against them. You communicate your feelings without harming the other person. Well, that's it for today, my friends. Next week, we're going to start Unit 2, conflict resolution, and we are going to begin with the two root causes of conflict, gossip, and complaining. So have a great week, and I'll see you next time.